It's time for the sauce.
Michael Franzese didn't leave the mob in a wooden box or in the witness protection plan. Michael, welcome.
Well, thank you for having me.
We really appreciate your time. I am your host, Marty the Paisan. We really appreciate you calling in. You have an incredible story, and it's very inspiring to others. So tell our listeners how you are able to walk on the same streets you walked when you were a captain of the Columbo Crime Family.
Well, you know, it's been a long story. As you know, Marty, I left that life just about 20 years ago, and it's been wasn't a difficult thing to do. You know, it's forbidden. You're not allowed to leave that life, even though I didn't, you know, testify against anybody or go into the program, didn't cooperate in any way. But you just can't walk away from that oath. And, you know, it's a combination of things for me, especially at the level I reached. I mean, I was a Capo regime, and, you know, at one point in time, they were grooming me to be the boss or the underboss because I had reached that level. But, you know, it's a combination of things. Number one, I lived in that life for over 20 years at a very high level. So I knew the mentality of the guys. I knew what they wouldn't do. I knew what they would do. So I changed my whole lifestyle. I mean, I moved out of New York. I can't exist in New York on a permanent basis. I moved out to the West Coast, changed my habits, meaning I haven't been in a club in, you know, 25 years. Why? Bad place for me. I know who hangs out in those places. Makes a phone call back to New York. They want to be a hero. I walk into the parking lot. Boom, I'm gone. So I avoid that. I don't go to the same restaurant, you know, every Tuesday night, let's say, and sit in the same chair. I don't walk my dog every morning at 7 o'clock. So if somebody was looking for me, they would, you know, see it affect me that way. So, you know, there was a lot of changes. Fortunately, I was pretty disciplined about it because of the experience that I had. And, you know, I also believe I'm a strong person of faith now, and I believe that, you know, God had a different purpose in my life. He's made that clear for me over the last 20 years. And then, quite honestly, I just outlasted everybody. I mean, everybody I know is either dead or in prison for the rest of their lives. Their life was devastated back in the mid-'80s when Giuliani started to use those racketeering laws very effectively. And a lot of guys went to jail. A lot of guys have died off. And, you know, the fact that I didn't hurt anybody certainly went in my favor. And so it's a combination of those things. And, you know, like I tell people, this wasn't, you know, some grand plan where I had it all figured out and I knew it was going to work out, because I never sold my former associates short. Those guys were very capable and, you know, just very determined at times. I think I was very blessed, very lucky, and that's the best I can say. Here I am.
Here you are. Now, when you became a made man in La Cosa Nostra, you had to take an oath. What was this oath all about? Can you tell me? Go into it a little bit?
I mean, I was proposed into that life by my dad. And when I say proposed, you know, you can't just go up to somebody that's a made guy and say, hey, I'd like to join. Somebody has to propose you. They have to vouch for you. They have to say you have what it takes. And in my case, it was my dad. And once he proposed me, you know, I met with the then acting boss. You know, we were part of the Columbo family, and Joe Columbo was the boss, but he got shot and eventually died from the wounds. And there was a new boss at the time who's now passed on. And, you know, he ran it down for me. He says, from now on, 24/7, you answer to this family. We're number one in your life. You got to do anything we tell you to do. And just tell you how serious that is. If your mother is sick and dying and you're at her bedside and we call you to service, you leave your mother's side, you come and serve us. So this is number one in your life. You got to put it before anything. And for about the next year and a half after that speech, I was in kind of a recruit period where I had to do anything and everything I was told to do to prove myself worthy. And after about a year and a half, I proved myself worthy in their eyes. And it was Halloween night, 1975. When I walked into a room with 5 other gentlemen, and we walked in individually, and it was a very solemn ceremony. You know, they wanted you to understand the seriousness of what you were getting involved in, and it was a blood oath. I mean, they do cut your finger with a knife, and you know, nothing drastic, but a little blood drops on the floor. I had cupped my hands. They took a picture of a saint, the Catholic altar card, put it on my hands and lit it aflame. It didn't hurt. It was merely symbolic. It burned quickly. And they said, tonight, Michael Franzese, you're born again into a new life, into La Cosa Nostra, this thing of ours. Violate what you know about this life or betray your brothers and you'll die and burn in hell like the saint is burning in your hands. And they said, do you accept? And I said, yes, I do. And that's how it started for me.
Now, a couple times you mentioned your dad. Sonny was involved in La Cosa Nostra in the 1950s and 1960s. Now, he was just released from prison in June of this year. Racketeering, fraud, loan sharking are some of the things your dad is known for. What are some of the things that you remember about your dad as a young child?
Well, I love my dad. My dad was my idol, my hero. He was a great father, a great husband to my mother. He loved his kids. Tried to bring me up the right way. Didn't want this life for me originally. He wanted me to go to school and be a doctor. And he always told me, son, stay off the street, get an education. That's what it's about. And like I said, a great father. I really looked up to him. I think he taught me a lot of things growing up that certainly served me well in my childhood and then as an adult. But what happened with Dad is he was indicted and convicted on a federal case back in 1966, a case until this day I will say he was framed on. They charged him with masterminding a nationwide series of bank robberies, and it was 100% frame up. And people, I say this all the time, I went to jail for a crime that I was guilty of, and I pled guilty, did my time. My dad certainly did other things in his life, but he didn't do the crime that he was convicted of, and eventually sentenced to 50 years in prison. So my dad was released. He spent 38 years in prison since 1970. He's been in and out a few times on parole and then was violated. But he did 38 years. He was the oldest living inmate, the oldest inmate, I should say, in the federal system until his release on June 23rd. He's now 100 years old.
Wow.
He was a very active figure in that life. Yeah, he lived to be 100 and is still there kicking. And it's good to have him home, you know, and he was the guy that I'd learned from, and as far as I'm concerned, he was the best of the bunch.
Now, didn't at some point you believe that he put a contract out on you?
Well, listen, what happened was when I walked away from that life, it was normal. Everybody believed that I was going to become a witness and that I was going to start testifying. And obviously I could have hurt a lot of people. I was a pretty active guy, but the FBI was putting a lot of pressure on me, and they did me real dirty in that they put my name on the witness list of a lot of trials of my friends that were going on in New York. So people were getting discovery, and my name was on it. So people had a hard time believing that I wasn't going to testify, because when you walk away, it's normal. Normally people walk away to save themselves, and they start to help the government. But that's not what I was about, and that's not what I was interested in. You know, the boss of my family at the time, who's now doing life, he put an immediate contract on me. He was very upset when I walked away. He took it very personal. And my dad went along with it. And I was told that, and I believed it, because I know my dad. This life meant everything to him. It didn't mean he didn't love me. But, you know, I violated the oath as far as he was concerned, and it's something that we're not allowed to do. Now, so I had a rough time. You know, I don't want to make light of it. I had a rough time for a number of years. When I was in prison, they locked me down for a while because, you know, they're not going to take responsibility if I would have got killed or hurt in the yards. They kept me in lockdown, which was not fun. But after a while, when people realized, because all these trials were coming up and I didn't show up, then they knew that what I was saying was true. But that took years. And after all of that faded, then my dad and I, we didn't speak for 10 years. And then he sent for me when he was out on parole, and I did go to visit him. And ever since, we've kind of patched it up, and we're pretty. I'm thrilled because I love my dad, and I know he loves me, and the relationship is important to me. So it ended up okay.
So we're going to talk about your book in just a minute here, but I got a question for you. Now, in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, La Cosa Nostra was powerful. Why do you think it's not as powerful as it was back even in the 80s? I mean, you don't hear about the stuff that you heard 20 years ago?
Well, the answer is very simple. I don't know if you realize how devastating law enforcement has been on my former life. Starting in the mid-'80s with Giuliani, you got to give him the credit or the blame, depending on what side you are. He started using those racketeering laws extremely effectively. I mean, I had two federal RICO indictments, one brought on by Giuliani. Fortunately, I was acquitted, or I wouldn't be here now, because they're giving out, 100 years, 150 years, stuff like that, which most of my former associates, that's the kind of time they were getting. So they used the racketeering laws very effectively, and I won't get into detail, but I know the law intimately well. It's an extremely hard law to defend yourself against. Very, very, very. Not only is it expensive with lawyers and time, but it's very difficult. It's all the government's way. Then you have the Sentencing Reform Act, where now they give you a bundle of time, where before they didn't get time. And then you got the Bail Reform Act, where now everybody's either a threat to society or you're a flight risk, and then they hold you with no bail. It's very hard to fight a case when you're inside rather than on the outside where you have the resources and the tools. So, my former life didn't keep up with that. There's more informants on the street now than you ever saw in your lifetime. Because remember, everybody's saying it's the young guys today, they can't stand up like the old guys. Well, let me tell you the difference. Back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, you went to jail, you got 10 years, you got 15 years, you get out on parole in half. Anybody can do that time. We could have done that time standing on our head. Today, you get indicted and convicted on a racketeering case, you got 50 years, you got no parole, you got to do 85% of your time. So the FBI comes to some guys, what do you want to do? You want to help us a little bit, or you want to stay here for the rest of your life? You help us, we'll put you in a program, we'll set you up, we'll get you out of here. And guys don't stand up anymore when they're going to do the rest of their life in jail. That's what happened. There's a lot of old-timers that became informants after that. I mean, Joey Messina, who was the boss of the family in Brooklyn, he got 3 life sentences and started to cooperate. And he was a boss.
Oh, my God.
The same thing that happened in Philadelphia, places like that, because guys don't stand up. Messina. And he was a good friend of mine. And so, these things it's just tough. The government has too many tools. They have too many weapons. It's all this way. And I saw that. That was one of the main reasons why I said, you know what? I'm the youngest guy at everybody. If I get convicted, they're going to give me 300 years. I'm done. And I saw the things starting to turn and the trends starting to go the wrong way for us. And so that's why it's not as strong as it used to be. They put all the guys away. The new guys coming up have a little different outlook on that life. I will tell you this, guys, I won't count them out. I don't think it'll go away in my lifetime. But if the government continues this assault that they've had, it's not going to last. I can tell you that.
It's not. You don't see it like you used to. But
no.
to move on, so what's happening next? With you got a book out there, and where can people possibly hear you speak?
It's more than that. Let me tell you, I'm very fortunate. Like I said, I've been speaking now for just about 20 years, ever since I was released from prison. I do, 70 to 80 dates a year, really prolific, and I love doing that because I think the message that I send out is the right one. People seem to respond to it. The phone keeps ringing, and I'm on my 5th right now. We have other products that hopefully all the products that I put out are for the benefit of people. And,
wow, 5
and that
books.
Always works well. Coming out, I was in a film. I did a small role. I'm on screen probably 10 or 15 minutes, I think. It's a Christian film called Let There Be Light with Kevin Sorbo. That's coming out in November, I think, in 2,000 screens. So I've been getting a lot of play on that. I got 2 more TV shows that right now looks like they're going to go. One's a reality show, and the other's a scripted series that it looks like it's going to go. There's a lot of interest now in the mob brand, and I'm pretty much the guy out there that people turn to after all these years that I've been doing this. And then my most exciting project is I'm actually involved in and producing a show in Vegas. It's going to be in Bally's, the biggest stage in all of Vegas, and it's basically the history of the mob in Las Vegas set to music and dance. And it's a show I'm really excited about. We're going to premiere it in November, and we're working hard on it right now. So those are all the things I have got going on.
So if people want to find out about it, You're on Facebook and you got a website. What's that?
I'm on Facebook and Twitter, and my website is michaelfranzese.com. I'm married now 32 years to a woman who played an intricate part in this whole transformation for me, because she held me accountable. She was a strong person of faith. You know, I loved her and respected her, and I didn't want to do anything to put myself back in trouble or jeopardize my family in any way. And you don't do this alone. You got to have the right people around you. I always tell, you know, it's a message I give out to our young people, because I work with a lot of these gangbangers. I go into juvenile halls. I'm always in prisons, you know, speaking to inmates. And I tell them straight out, you know, in this life, we are who we hang out with. We hang with the wrong crowd. You know, you're going to be influenced in the wrong way. And, you know, I also tell people, listen, when I came to faith, I didn't get a lobotomy. I don't forget the stuff that I did on the street. And sometimes, you know, you get in a situation, it's tempting to go back. If you don't surround yourself and you don't keep yourself straight, you know, on a daily basis, it's easy to fall back. And that's been a real blessing for me to have the right people around me, keep me accountable, and keep me in the right direction.
Michael, thank you so much for being our guest tonight. You've shared a lot of time here tonight, and we really appreciate it. So thank you so much, and all the best to you.
No problem. You got it.